Superman #1 is Priceless. Guys, I'm excited about this one. I'm an early Golden Age guy, and this is gonna be good.
Back in November, a comic book discovered by three brothers in a box in their late mother's attic sold at auction for over $9 million.
Here's the crazy part. Action Comics #1 just sold for 15 million, guys, which I'm not even surprised about because if, Superman #1, which came out in 39, a year later, sold for 9 million, yeah, it was just a matter of time before Action Comics #1 broke that record.
Becoming the most valuable comic book in the world. That
Until
comic was this comic. Superman
Not
#1.
really. Not really.
I mean, not literally this
Yeah,
comic.
not that one. Not that
I've
one.
done
No,
okay
no, no,
with
no.
this YouTube gig over the years, but I ain't got $9 million lying around to spend on comics, especially when reprints like.
Question, if you had Superman #1, the $9 million worth comic, or, let's say it was a crappy one for $500,000, would you sell it or would you keep it? You know what I'm saying? Would you? I don't know. Like, I'm a huge Superman fan, but I got them bills, my man.
Like this one are available for so much less. This is the facsimile edition
I have some of
Superman
those. Yep.
#1 that DC published a few years ago. An exact duplicate of the original edition, which was published in May 1939 with a June 1939 cover date. Since it was just auctioned for such a massive price tag, I thought it would be fun to make a video about what's actually in this
Good
issue.
idea.
Yes, the originals from 1939 that survive are valuable collector's items. Yes, it's a landmark in comics history because it's the first superhero comic devoted entirely to a single character. But what's in it? What are the stories? Is there anything that makes Superman #1 special?
Well, Action Comics #1 is the one that's really special because that's the first Superman story. But this is the one where they said, hey, Superman's time is getting cluttered with all these extra characters. We got to put this guy in his own comic with his own stories, and that is what is special.
Besides the fact that it's Superman #1, the answer is yes. Superman #1 contains some of my favorite stories.
With an incredibly iconic cover. Like, man, that is iconic.
From the early years of the character. The problem is, all the stories in Superman #1 are reprints of stories that were originally published the year before in Action Comics. And I already talked about most of them in a previous video in this series. So
do we go back and do we watch the other, or do we stay here? I don't know. I don't either.
I'll figure something out.
We're here for it, man.
Oh, okay. Here's something.
Oh,
it's not all reprints.
Okay,
There is some new stuff. A bit of original material, Siegel and Schuster
indeed.
added to the reprinted stories to sweeten the pot, those clever boys. The issue begins with an...
Honestly, as a first-time reader back then, I think I would have appreciated that. I would have been like, yes, the ones I missed or my favorites all in one spot, mixed with some new ones. I think that would have been great, to be honest.
Expanded retelling of Superman's origin story.
Yep.
And it's this version that actually establishes the broad strokes of that origin that are still more or less followed whenever that story is retold today. Action Comics #1 begins with an efficient single-page version of the origin that gives us the basics.
The evolution of Superman, like grasshoppers. It compares them to grasshoppers. Yeah, it was a very quick little thing, like letting you know people from Krypton evolved to be able to jump far, and he was an orphan here, and so he has those powers.
Where Superman comes from, what his powers are, the fact that he uses his powers to help those in need and be a champion of the oppressed. In Superman #1, Siegel and Schuster expand that a little to give us a better idea of, to paraphrase a line from Batman's origin story, who Superman is and how he came to be.
Exactly. And by the way, Steve, where did you get that shirt? By golly, that's good.
The story begins with this beautiful panel showing Superman's spaceship escaping as the planet Krypton explodes behind it. I love this panel because not only is it a wonderful image of classic pulp sci-fi in its own right, it's the beginning of the story, and Krypton has already exploded, which serves to validate my theory. Krypton doesn't matter. Are you a Superman writer wondering what you should do with Krypton? The answer is nothing. The most important thing that could ever be done with Krypton has already been done. It blew up. Anyway, after that, we get the discovery of Superman's ship by
There's a novel by Kevin J. Anderson about Krypton. It's really good. I like
The
it.
Kents, they find the baby inside the rocket ship and immediately turn him over to an orphanage. That might strike us as cold-hearted today, but put yourself in their position. They're described as elderly, which by the standards
And they just went through the Depression, you know? So they're like, you know what? You know how we got through the Depression? By not feeding other people. That's how we got through the Depression.
of the time meant they were probably, what, in their early 40s? Plus, if Superman is just starting out as Superman in the late 1930s, that means that the Kents found him as a baby during, what, the 1910s?
Yeah,
there was a war on.
Yeah.
And an influenza pandemic. They weren't...
Yeah, that's a good point. No, they wouldn't have been through the... Yeah, okay. No, yeah. They'd been pre-depression because... Yeah, I wasn't even thinking right.
Trying to have kids? Little Clark is lucky they didn't just leave him in that field to let nature take its course. People did that shit back then. They didn't care. Don't judge them too harshly, though. Clark's only in the orphanage for one panel. The Kents come back and say, hey, can we have that baby we dropped off here the other day? We thought it over and we'd like to adopt him. Baby Clark already has his superpowers and has apparently been trashing the place, so the head of the orphanage is...
And they're just like, yeah, sure, take the kid, not... Wait, what's going on here?
Only too happy to send him home with the Kents. I get a chuckle from the outdated vocabulary here. It's technically not called an orphanage, it's called an orphan's asylum. And when the Kents come back to adopt Clark, the head honcho thinks to himself, thank goodness they're taking him away before he wrecks the asylum, which, to my modern ear, makes it sound like the place is an institution for insane babies.
I think it's J.K. Rowling. She has a company I've actually worked for sculpting before called Loomis. And they're, I think, to keep orphans out of orphanages, something like that. And that so their creed is something along the lines of this, that they're against the institutionalization of children, which is a harsh-sounding phrase, but that, you know, that's what it is. And I think I got that right. I can't remember.
A thought I find both tragic and hilarious. Next, we get a panel of the Kents offering some moral instruction to young Clark. Pa Kent tells him to hide his powers from others, while Ma Kent emphasizes that when the time comes, he must also use his powers to help others. You want to talk about efficient storytelling? Look at how many ideas from this single panel took hold and became defining characteristics of Superman.
No joke. That is it. Like, that's it, you know? And that's amazing. It is interesting, thinking of Man of Steel, how much what his dad said is reminiscent of John Kent in the Snyderverse movie, if you think about it.
Single panel took hold and became defining characteristics of Superman. We've got Clark's upbringing by the Kents being his inspiration to become a hero. We've got a reasonable justification for the secret identity. Interestingly, this justification didn't quite stick, did it? The usual excuse for Clark maintaining a double identity as Superman is that he does it to protect the people who are close to him,
right,
so that Superman's enemies can't strike at him through his loved ones. Here, Paul tells him to keep his powers secret so that he doesn't scare other people, which is different, but I like it too. It still suggests that part of the reason for the secret identity is to protect others.
Yeah.
If he's going to use his powers to do good.
See, and Steve, that is what I love about Superman. He is about and for other people. He's got all this great power where he could, you know, have a harem. You know, he could do all that. But he uses it for other people. That's amazing.
He can't be a cause of fear in those he's trying to help. And finally, we've got Ma Kent telling Clark, you must use your powers to assist humanity. We associate the concept of with great power comes great responsibility with Spider-Man, and obviously that particular phrase belongs exclusively to old Webhead. But when it comes to the basic idea, as with so many other basic ideas found in superhero comics, Superman did it first. There's a simple appeal.
It's true. They phrased it better, but he did it first. Guys, if you like reaction content, don't forget to subscribe. This is my brand new superhero reaction channel, separated from my main Superman channel, Kryptonite Korner. And if you want me to react to more of Steve's stuff, let me know, because I've been told to react to Steve's stuff. so I am. I haven't been given a specific video, I don't think, but I chose this one on my own. But I will react to more if you guys just put it in the comments.
At the heart of the Superman character. James Gunn's Superman movie understood it, and we see it expressed here in Superman #1.
Yeah.
Sometimes selfish teenagers or cynical adults will ask, why wouldn't he use his powers to get rich? Or to spy on the women's locker room? Why does he use his powers to help?
Well, he does in Smallville once, as he tells Pete once.
People. And the answer is because he's a good person and he can. It's not complicated. There it is in 2 lines of dialogue.
That's beautiful, Steve. It's exactly correct.
Dialogue from the Kents in a single panel. The following page, we get a summary of Clark growing up, exploring his powers, leaping incredible distances. Remember, he can't exactly fly yet. Gorilla press.
Man, if you can leap an eighth of a mile, though, you are going to look like you're flying for a large portion of that leap. And what's interesting is that even though he couldn't fly in Action Comics #1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, he looked like he was flying in a lot of those shots. And that was one of the things I fell in love with when I first read the original comics, was that I was like, you can see it. You can see the growth and the evolution happening. You can see that even though he's not flying, he looks like it, and they were building it right there. It was very cool.
Cars, outracing trains, laughing at a befuddled doctor who just broke another needle against his impenetrable skin,
and
as if it's that guy's fault. Perhaps an early glimmer of what a petty Superman was capable of being in the Golden.
He was to bad guys, but in the doctor situation, that's kind of fun.
In Silver Ages.
I like the Golden Age, though. Most of you know that watch my channel regularly. But the Golden Age Superman, he could be a little bit of a jerk sometimes, but it was towards the bad guys usually. Towards regular people, greatest guy ever.
Once again, look at how resonant these simple panels turned out to be throughout the history of the character.
Yeah,
Richard
powerful.
Donner took the image of Clark racing a train and turned it into an iconic and iconically goofy scene in his first Superman film. And while we don't get the words, we get the scenes that later inspired a couple of elements of the memorable introduction heard in the Fleischer animated shorts, the radio show, and the 1950s George Reeves TV series. More powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Speaking of tall buildings, there's a reminder of how much Superman's backstory has changed over the decades, because here it sure seems like he grew up in the city, doesn't it?
That's a really good point. I was thinking about that too, because they don't give you a ton, but they do show him leaping over buildings as a kid. Which is really cool.
He didn't learn to hurdle skyscrapers as a boy in Kansas, did he? There's no mention at all of Smallville. There's no mention at all of the Kents being farmers. Those pieces of the puzzle wouldn't be fitted in until later. At the bottom of the page, we get a melancholy panel of Clark standing at the graves of
again, very reminiscent looking of Man of Steel.
His parents, with a caption telling us that it was the deaths of the Kents that finally convinced Clark to put on a costume and become Superman, to dedicate his life to using his abilities to do good for the world. That's kind of sweet, right? He does it for his parents, to honor their memories by living out the values they instilled in him. I do have some questions, though. We get this panel of Clark standing at their graves, and the deaths of his parents are referred to collectively.
That's
the
true.
Passing away of his foster parents greatly grieved Clark Kent, but it strengthened a determination that had been growing.
Doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't one after another, because, the deaths, because when one was still alive, he still had that one. You know what I mean? But when they both died, that's when you're really going to start thinking, because you're alone. He's not married. He has no kids. You know what I mean? So it probably isn't any weird conspiracy of how they died.
Growing in his mind, as though it was a single event. So did Ma and Pa Kent die at the same time?
Maybe.
Was it one of those situations?
Maybe he sneezed. I don't know.
Situations where an old couple has been together for like 50 years and one of them dies and then the other dies a few days later, as if they couldn't bear to go on without their partner.
It was a Notebook
Were they in a
situation.
car accident? Is that part of why Clark feels so bad? He wasn't there to...
Is it why he's bashing a car in Action Comics #1? I don't know.
I
don't know.
He was distracted, off racing a train or getting his reps in, pressing an automobile over his...
He's developing such a funny scenario. How did Clark's parents die? Well, while he was out racing a train, you know,
Head went, wait, were Ma and Pa Kent in the car that Clark was pressing over his head?
yes,
And Clark was pushing himself, trying to
That's
break
the
his
one.
record, and he was
That's the one.
struggling on that last rep that he couldn't quite make it, and he dropped the car, and it flipped upside down and landed that way, and his poor parents were crushed to death inside? Is that what happened?
It could have been,
Was
man.
Clark Kent accidentally, but directly, responsible for the deaths of both his...
Wow, he just took it and ran with it. Now Clark is like an evil... this...
parents? Beat that, Spidey! Or is there another explanation for the Kents' seemingly simultaneous expiration?
Yeah,
Did one of them kill the other and then do a self-checkout? A Metropolis murder
we're still going there, huh?
The old Gig Young special. Who did who, do you think? Did Pa take out Ma, or was it the other way around?
Maybe he shot Clark to try to kill him because he was so evil. The bullet bounced off of Clark and hit Ma in the head, and he was so sad with what he did. Well, you know the rest.
I wish Jerry Siegel were still alive. I'd go to a convention and stand in line just to see the look on his face when I asked him that question. However they died, suspiciously at the same
Jerry?
time, Clark goes straight from his parents' graves to the offices of a major metropolitan newspaper
The Daily Star.
that is not yet named the Daily Planet. Originally, it was the Daily Star. Clark walks in like, hey, let me talk to...
I still think of Lois looking like that. I don't think that's Lois, though. But I still think of Lois looking like
the
that.
editor. And the secretary says, yeah, sure, go talk to him. He loves it when I send random people off the street in to bother him. Clark walks into the editor's office like, hey, I don't have any experience, but give me a job. The editor, who remains nameless in this issue, but is eventually called George Taylor, and then a little while later renamed Perry White by the writers of the Adventures of Superman radio show, tells Clark to scram. Determined to get a job as a reporter, because if he can be the first to hear about breaking news, he can be more effective as a hero, Clark changes into his Superman costume, overhears the editor talking on the phone about a mob attacking the county jail, and races off to stop anyone from getting hurt, and also to get the story and impress the editor so he can get a job, but mostly to stop anyone from getting hurt. The mob batters down the door of the jail and drags this guy, Sims, outside. They're preparing to hang him from a tree growing conveniently nearby when Soups arrives on the scene and says nobody's getting hanged unless a judge says so. Now pound tar! The mob doesn't like being bossed around by Superman.
You know, I never thought about it till just now, though, you know, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster weren't Christian. This would be a Christian story. But Jesus, the woman who had committed adultery, the law of Moses said to, you know, stone. He says, whoever's without sin cast the first stone. In other words, you're not judge on the, you know, like he's saying here to this guy, you're not judge. You know what I mean? You're not going to bring out justice. That's really interesting because this was accidental. This wasn't an on purpose thing. I'm almost positive. There is a possibility, obviously, but I'm almost positive that's not on purpose. So that's really interesting.
So Superman beats up the mob. Once he's safely back in his cell, Sims tells Superman, look, in exchange for saving my life, I'll give you a tip that will help you save my life again. I'm in jail for the murder of Jack Kennedy, but I didn't do it. Lee Harvey Oswald did it. Why are there so many people who just refuse to believe that it was Oswald? I don't get it. Different Jack Kennedy. What Sims actually tells Superman is that there's someone else who's been arrested for the killing of Jack Kennedy, a woman named Evelyn Curry, who is being executed for the crime tonight. So wait, this guy Sims and Evelyn Curry were both arrested for the murder of Jack Kennedy, but this Sims guy is still sitting in the county jail while Evelyn Curry is going to the chair for it?
This is why the oppressed needed a friend, right there.
Tonight? Sexist? Sims tells Superman that the real killer of Kennedy is B. Carroll, the nightclub singer, who killed Kennedy for cheating on her and then framed Evelyn Curry. And also Sims is involved in some way that is not at all clear. Superman's like, thanks for the info, chump. And
because he knows that she didn't do it.
Immediately calls it into the editor at the Daily Star. He says, so, do I get the job? And the editor goes, yeah, sure. It's the 30s, and this is a comic book for...
That's what it is. He knows the truth. They were going to hang him. So that's what it is.
For children, nobody will ever question the plausibility of this. Later, Clark goes to the nightclub where B. Carroll sings. He catches her act as Clark then changes into Superman and surprises her in her dressing room like, I know it was
Say.
you who killed Kennedy. It wasn't me. It was the Mafia. It was the Mossad. It was George H.W. Bush. It was LBJ. It wasn't me, I tell you. Different Jack Kennedy. You're wasting your breath denying it. Sims told me the whole story, except for the details of why the cops think he had something to do with it, which you'd think would have been of paramount importance to him given his situation. B's like, say, you sure fill out those tights nicely, don't you? Maybe we can work out some...
It is funny. You attract me. That's how Gen Z should start flirting with each other. You attract me.
Arrangement that doesn't involve me getting arrested. Superman's like, sorry, Toots, the only lady I'll be making love to tonight is named Justice. She does it blindfolded. She's kinky like that.
I can't take his paraphrasing.
B pulls a gun like, I hate it when men I'm attracted to sleep with other people. You'll pay for this. But first, okay, yes, I did kill Jack Kennedy for your information. Now take this. But before she can even pull the trigger, Superman snatches the gun, crushes it, and forces B to sign a confession. A confession she signs after being threatened by an incredibly strong stranger in a bright blue unitard who snuck into her dressing room.
That wouldn't even hold up in court now. I'd be like, yeah, it was under threat of death.
I'm sure that'll hold up in court. Superman scoops her up under his arm and dives out the window, and everything from this point on is a reprint of the first Superman story ever published from Action Comics #1. Supes races to the governor's man.
That was one of the cool things I liked about it, was they continuation, right? That was pretty cool.
Pushes his way in, presents the governor with the signed confession of the...
Which makes me wonder if they had already had that story, part of the story planned, but they had to cut it short or something. I'm not sure.
Killer, and the governor gets on the phone and stops the execution of Evil and Curry. What's interesting about the reprint in the context of its inclusion here is how thoughtful Siegel and Schuster were in crafting the new material so that it doesn't detract from the original story. If that's even what it was. For example, when B pulls the gun...
They may have told them they had that, and they may have just not liked that for their...
Superman in her dressing room, the obvious thing to happen next is for her to shoot and for the bullets to bounce off of Superman's chest. But that doesn't happen. Instead, Superman just grabs the gun out of her hand and crushes it.
Which is a Golden Age staple. George Reeves did it all the time in Adventures of Superman. And I mean, he just took the gun and crushed it, you know. So it's really cool that that was a staple.
A move George Reeves would make one of his trademarks as Superman on TV in the 1950s. Why doesn't B shoot Superman?
You know your stuff, Steve. I've watched stuff before over the years of you, and you know your stuff when it comes to Superman. I'm proud of you. Proud of you, buddy. Where'd you get that shirt?
Superman in the dressing room? Because later on, in the material reprinted from Action Comics #1, the governor's butler shoots Superman after he breaks into the mansion. And that's where the bullet bounces off Superman's chest bit happens. Siegel and Schuster came up with a different way for Superman to respond to having a gun pulled on him for the scene in B. Carroll's dressing room to avoid making the scene where the butler shoots him redundant. I love picking up on little details like that. It reminds me that Superman didn't just appear out of the ether and immediately take on a life of his own. He was the creation of two artists, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who knew what they were doing from the beginning and who got really good at it really fast.
Yeah, and they even have short stories. Like in 1939, I have this short story that they wrote, and it really clarifies what their vision was for Clark Kent. And a lot of people say Golden Age Clark wasn't, you know, the Christopher Reeve type. He really was. Christopher Reeve added, I think, a bit clumsiness, but I think he got that because of the fact that he was supposed to be this sheepish, shy, mild-mannered, scared often guy. And that short story really shows it really well.
I have a great admiration for that original Action Comics #1 story, but the obvious and rapid improvement in both the writing and the artwork of Superman is truly a marvel to behold.
Yes.
And you can see it in both the original...
It doesn't take long either. It doesn't take long.
And reprinted material in Superman #1. The style and complexity of Joe Shuster's artwork would continue to evolve, as would Jerry Siegel's writing, and soon enough their efforts would be aided and ultimately exceeded by those of other artists who contributed to the character. But even within the first few months of the character's existence, as seen in the Superman stories from the earliest issues of Action Comics, reprinted here in Superman #1, the speed and scale of that evolution is remarkable. Here's how Superman looks in his very first appearance in Action Comics #1.
I love how he says, "You needn't be afraid of me." And I know exactly what he's showing here because he looks good. He looks great, but he also looks a bit more like a sketch, if that makes sense. That's the best way I can describe it. Looks a bit more like somebody really trying to meet a deadline, which I don't think is really what that was. I think it probably was more lack of expertise, possibly. Now, the funny thing is, Lois looks about the same.
Here he is in Action Comics #4. Look how the emblem on his chest has gone from a nondescript yellow triangle
that
to a
changes
shield.
Quick.
Here he is on one of the pages of new material for Superman #1 with that familiar profile, determined, squinting.
It's smoother looking, too. That Action Comics #1 had a different look to
expression and curl of black hair across his forehead. There's still a lot of inconsistency in the art from story to story and even from panel to panel, but
height of boots, shape of S, shape of emblem, all kinds of stuff.
It's clear that Siegel and Schuster are trying things and figuring things out and getting better and better with each subsequent adventure.
Man, and I relate to that as a professional artist. I've been a professional artist for over a decade, sculpting. I relate, and also YouTube too. I have tried and experimented on things, and I've let videos bomb because I'm like, we won't know unless we see, And I've done all kinds of different things because I love to experiment, and that's exactly what they were doing.
One thing Siegel and Schuster had figured out from the beginning, and it's evident in both the original material they produced for Superman #1 and every reprinted story. Superman was meant to be a man of the people.
Yes.
Repeatedly throughout the book, he is described
to serve them, to save them, to utilize all the power he had for their sake. Absolutely. Yes, that is 100% true. He deserved with that power to be king, but he wasn't. He wasn't going to do it. Instead, he gave it to the people.
As the champion of the oppressed, someone who uses his power to protect the weak and to seek justice for those to whom it has been denied.
Exactly.
In the first story, he saves an innocent woman from being wrongfully executed and takes a detour to stop a man from beating his wife. In the second, he intervenes to stop a war that has been contrived by a profiteering arms manufacturer.
The war stuff bothers me because even though it doesn't bother me to read it because World War II and all that came and went, but during the time when he was like fighting Nazis and stuff, after he was done, people were still dealing with the war. You know what I mean? In real life. That's why I don't like politics in my Superman stories, because when they have him, do stuff, I'm like, yeah, but we're still dealing with it. You know what I mean? Like it's still happening. I don't like politics in I'd rather it be reminiscent but not direct, if that makes sense. So you want to have him defeat a wartime, whatever, make up a country, make up some people. Kind of like how James Gunn did with the new movie. Didn't particularly like that either because he did still relate it. But I do appreciate that he didn't use the direct countries. I really do.
The third, he exposes the unsafe labor practices of a wealthy mine owner. And in the fourth, he abducts, drugs, and impersonates a football player to prevent a crime.
He has a third disguise all the time, not just Superman and Clark Kent. He does this all the time in the Golden Age. He disguises to go in to do stuff. That is really cool.
Could coach from winning a big game. They weren't all two-fisted tales of social justice, okay? Some of them were just weird. Like I mentioned earlier, I already did a video about the early Action comic stories that are reprinted here. It's the second video I ever did for this Best Superman Ever series. In fact, go check it out if you want to hear my thought.
If you guys want to hear me react to that one, let me know. Because I haven't watched much of his stuff in the past probably year or two, but I've watched a lot of his stuff in the past. The Superman specific. Anything else I really don't care about too much. But sorry, Steve. People do that to me too. It's just YouTube. But let me know if you want me to react to more of his stuff, even if it's not Superman.
So on those stories in more detail. There is one more piece that is original to Superman #1. It comes after the reprint of the wacky football story from Action Comics #4, and it is its own kind of oddball curiosity, because even though it's a Superman story printed in a Superman comic, it's not a comic. It's a work of prose. A Superman...
Y'all heard me talking about that short story? That's it. That's it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. We get the best version of Clark Kent from the Golden Age to show that what Christopher Reeve did was not that far off from that story right there. It's fantastic. The elevator scene is the biggest depiction of what I'm talking
And
about.
short story, written
Watch
by
see if
Jerry
he
Siegel,
talks
with a
about it.
few small illustrations by Joe Shuster. A squad of cops, led by Sergeant Blake, responds to a frantic call from a patent attorney whose office Superman has just trashed. I'm guessing the patent attorney was up to something crooked, or else Superman just has an all-encompassing hatred of patent law and all those who practice it. Honestly, at this point in the character's history, it could go either way.
It wouldn't be surprising, though it's not patent, the copyright for Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, they basically gave it in their deal to Action Comics because they said that we'll put your story in here if you give us the copyrights.
The cops think they've got Superman trapped in an elevator, but when the elevator reaches the bottom floor and opens, they're shocked to find only mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent inside.
Describe
After convincing the cops that he doesn't know anything about Superman...
Okay, I'll read if he's not going to describe it. Is it in here? I don't think
Clark tags along with Sergeant Blake to police headquarters and is on hand when infamous murderer Biff Dugan escapes. Blake blames Clark for Dugan's escape, so naturally, Clark knocks Sergeant Blake unconscious. Siegel writes, Clark Kent looked at the sergeant's recumbent figure, muttered, "Sorry, but I haven't time to use kid gloves." Then, with amazing rapidity, he stripped off his glasses and outer garments, revealing himself clad in a weird, close-fitting costume and flaring cape. In this apparel, it was apparent that he really possessed a fine physique of breathtaking symmetry. One lithe...
The reason that's important is because it was previously telling how he was the skinny, scared boy, which, like I said, I don't think it was where I don't think you could see that in there, but that's the part that I love.
Leap brought him to the windowsill. There, he poised momentarily, while his keen telescopic vision surveyed the vicinity. And then, as he sighted the figure of Biff scrambling into a parked auto, he dived out into space. It's a nice little story.
It is.
Very short, with some clever...
I love that he knows this stuff. I applaud you, Steve. This is great. Most people do not actually, I can tell you love the character, do not actually have this much love for the character. They like him and do some research, but you, sir, have been through this before, you know, and that's cool.
Moments. Siegel's prose is direct and unpretentious. I recommend checking it out, should you be inspired to get your hands on a copy of Superman #1, presumably online or in the form of a reprint like this one.
Hey, if you can get the 9mm one, that's cool.
Assuming an original printing is well out of the price range of anybody watching this shit. The prose story, along with the rest of Superman #1, reminds us of a few things about that original Superman that it's easy to forget almost 90 years after the character's debut.
Yeah.
Superman is pulpy. Superman doesn't get along with cops.
I don't know what pulpy is, but he doesn't always not get along with cops. It depends on the cops, you know, because it just depends.
Superman is himself a criminal. That prose story ends with Sergeant Blake grudgingly acknowledging Superman's help in reapprehending Biff Dugan, but also swearing to arrest him at the first opportunity. And Superman exists to fight for truth and justice, not power and property. You get all of that in this one comic book. Is that worth $9 million? I have no idea. How do you even put a price?
That's a good question.
On the best Superman ever?
That's a great question, guys. Let me know if you like me reacting to Steve Shives videos. I will do more if you want me to. I think that first issue is fantastic. Again, it's not really a first issue. You know, he'd been out for a year pretty much at that point. But it embodies so much of the character. The parts that are gone are that he turned to more of a Boy Scout and less of like a hard kind of, you know, like he's not even really rough with criminals too much, you know what I mean, anymore. But he kind of was there. And I don't necessarily fully agree that he was just against the cops, because it just depended. You know, like he had a certain, who was it he worked with? I can't remember. But I really liked his breakdown. That was really cool, guys. If you want some Superman stuff all in one place, check out my Amazon store. And just remember, like Superman, live humbly, do good.